Arctic Cat shuts down production, massive discounts on the Kawasaki Ridge, the best side-by-side for the apocalypse, and Can-Am has built how many Defenders? All that and more on this episode of the UTV Driver podcast. As always, I'm Editor-in-Chief Zach Bowman, and I'm joined by Executive Editor Aaron Richardson. Aaron, it seems like you've been having a pretty good hunting season this year. What have you been up to?
Yeah, that's right. I took all of last week off and spent it in the woods. Rifle season ends right around Thanksgiving this year, but we got an early start with muzzleloader, and yeah, so far been pretty good. Couple bucks on the ground, a couple more tags to fill, so hopefully I'll get out another time or two before the family shows up for the holidays, and we'll so anyway, it's been great.
Venison chili season, bud. I can't wait.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
All right. Well, while you've been out playing in the woods, the side-by-side world has not stopped, and we've got another kind of doom and gloom story running around. Parent company Textron, but that's the parent company for Arctic Cat, shut down production and laid off a bunch of people. What is going on?
Yeah, not great news. Unfortunately, like a second week in a row of not awesome news. And basically what's happening is there's a lot of inventory in dealerships right now, and we've had a couple of mild winters on the spin, and Arctic Cat, as the name implies, sells a lot of snow machines, a lot of like winter sport activity vehicles, and people aren't buying as many of them just because the weather has been what it is. Couple that with still high interest rates and just sort of the natural slowdown of people come into dealerships to buy side-by-sides after the pandemic. And you're seeing what you're seeing across the industry a lot, which is there are just dealers that are full of inventory, not as many buyers. Can-Am has had this issue. Polaris has had this issue. They're bigger companies, so they can absorb the hit a little bit better. But with Arctic Cat, they haven't got as much, they're just not as big of a company. And I think the other thing is they want to protect that core industry, the snowmobiles. And so side-by-sides were the first to go. It sounds like they laid off some ATV and side-by-side engineers over the summer, and now they're waiting until Q1 2025 to fire production back up.
Which isn't that far away.
No.
Trust me, if you're somebody working on the line at an Arctic Cat factory, being out of work for a month and a half, especially at the holidays, that's a tough time.
Yep.
But January's here. I know it doesn't feel that way, but January's right around the corner. Yeah, I don't know. It's tough. I think you're right that Arctic Cat being a smaller manufacturer, they don't have as many dealers to sort of absorb inventory in the way that Polaris and Can-Am do. So, Can-Am can sort of keep cranking out, or Polaris can keep cranking out units, and there's a place for them to go because somebody's always got their hand raised for, a new Razor or a Ranger or a Defender or whatever. Maybe that's not the case for an Arctic Cat. So, they obviously had to rein things in a little bit. And like we said last week, I think, we're continuing to see sort of that sort of normalization, that sort of stabilization of what it looks like. Because, everybody wanted a side-by-side during the pandemic because, there wasn't a whole lot to do and getting out in the woods was a good time. So, suddenly there were no units around. Dealers thought, holy crap, is this the new normal? They ordered a pile of machines. And all that slack had to be taken up in the manufacturing line, right? So suppliers had to get the parts that the factories needed. The factories had to then produce the machines, and the machines got out the door. So even though that was 3-4 years ago, we're still sort of got this sort of bumper car effect happening as things normalize. Hopefully, in 2025, we'll see things stabilize out a little bit. Hopefully, we'll see. The interest rates sort of calm down a little bit, and people will be able to get their hands on rigs. But until then, it's a bummer. It is a bummer.
Yeah, here's hoping it straightens out. I will say this: two things occurred to me while you were saying that. One, it says in our story that one of the muckety mucks at Arctic Cat was saying that they've got so much inventory that they can probably just relabel their 2025s as 2026s. The other thing you're seeing is Arctic Cat, I think, is a much more inventory-centric company where that, like, you go to a Cabela's or whatever, and they've got a ton of Arctic Cats in there, and that's sort of what they have. Whereas with Polaris and Can-Am, you're ordering them a little bit more. You go into a dealer and say, okay, I want this model with these following things. So that, like, having a ton of inventory in the dealership isn't great, but you're still having people come in and say, okay, I want this specific rig with these specific options on it. So there's not as much, it's less of a hit when you've just got stuff sitting there. Yeah. Whereas, as far as I know, people aren't ordering Arctic cats; they're just going in and buying them.
Yeah. Well, Arctic Cat's not the only company that's got a pile of units on the lot right now. Our second story here is about Kawasaki. Kawasaki, it's getting towards the end of the year. These guys typically do some sort of big sales event. Their Tis the Season sales event has some insane discounts on literally anything with the Kawasaki badge on it, but specifically side-by-sides, right?
Yeah. So the big headline is the Ridge. They're brand new for 2024, sort of wreck ute machine. You can get $3,000 off on one of those things, right?
So what does the Ridge? What does the Ridge start at? It's less than 30. It's way less than 30. So
I think it's.
Imagine being able to go into a Ford dealer and get 10% off an F-150.
Yeah.
That is a pile of money,
Yeah. And when you start talking about the Ridge is like a pretty affordable when you start putting on electric windows and HVAC and all that jazz. Like they're still they're real competitive with Can-Ams and Polarises of that in that ilk, but like when you knock $3,000 off that, you've got a big bargain on your hands.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's not the only rig that they've discounted. You can get a Terex for $2,000 off, which is again
$2,000 off 10%.
Yeah, 10% discount and $1,000 off of a Mule Pro,
which is like a brand new rig.
Yep, exactly. It's telling though, right? The Mule Pro is the least discounted of all of those models. It's like the least sexy, but it's also the least discounted, which tells you where Kawasaki makes all their bread and butter on these things, right? They're selling a ton of mules. There's not as much reason to discount them. I don't know. That's kind of me reading between the lines a little bit, but
that's true across the board.
Yeah.
We are clearly guilty of getting all hot and bothered about sport rigs, but the reality is utility machines are what the side-by-side industry runs on, right? Later we'll talk about how many Can-Am Defenders Can-Am's cranked out since that machine debuted. But, for the most part, the side-by-side industry is powered by guys just trying to get work done, which is why you're not seeing massive discounts on the Mule Pro.
Yep.
But...
the other thing about this discount, sorry, we should have mentioned this to kick off. They're offering 0% on some of these rigs for 6 months.
Dude.
So the interest rate is going to go up after 6 months, but 0% is unheard of unless it's you can get 3% on a Toyota, but they're also doing other loan terms that are like 3.95 for 60 months, which over the last 2 years has just not been a thing.
Yeah, dude. I think the last time I looked at my local credit union, a loan for a side-by-side was somewhere around 9% with pretty decent credit. So if you're talking a third of that, that's pretty serious savings in your pocket over the term of that loan.
Yeah, that is an absolute pile of money.
Yeah, that's absolutely wild. Yeah, so, hey, 'tis the season, as they say, and if you're looking to stick something green under your Christmas tree this year, you might want to head on down to the Kawasaki dealer because, that kind of cash off, that's a lot of gas. That's $3,000 off. That's a whole trailer. You need a trailer to go with your side-by-side? Kawasaki's got you covered. Boom, whack.
I tell you what, I don't know about you, but I would grab, I think I'd grab a KRX 1000. I just spent part of last month in the desert in one, did a little night drive. That is such a cool rig. It's just the right amount of horsepower. The chassis and suspension are still excellent. They were excellent when it came out in 2019, and they haven't even had to improve it. It's just that good. So
always,
that's the Kawasaki I'm taking home.
Always a bargain, right? But you knock a little coin off, or you get an excellent finance deal, you're good to go.
Yeah.
If you're not looking for a side-by-side, they also have some pretty wild deals on ATVs. $2,000 off a Brute Force 750, which is an astronomical amount of money. Everything, everything from dirt bikes to street bikes, jet skis. It's not jet ski season up here, but hey, down in the Southwest, go get your jet ski, ride around for Christmas. Be a good time. But all right, man, that's pretty exciting. So, speaking of KRX, I got a little bored last week. Not bored. Not bored. That's not the right word. I was having a conversation with my boss, Mark Hoyer. He's editor-in-chief of Cycle World, And he sat down and watched Mad Max for the first time in a long time, as you do.
How is it? He'd seen it before, right?
He had seen it. He had seen it before. I think it was just like the bi-monthly viewing of Mad Max, as far as I know.
Yeah,
right?
Okay.
And it got me thinking about how we don't really see side-by-sides in those movies, which also got me thinking about what is the best side-by-side for the apocalypse.
Okay, so I'm looking at your list here, and you got some pretty good ones on here. I think, my heart says the Can-Am Maverick R.
I mean that is the last V8 Interceptor. That is the that is Max's machine for the apocalypse, right?
Yeah, I just
I'm hearing doubt. I'm hearing a lot of doubt.
Well, with all due respect to Can-Am, one, there's not a ton of room for you're going to need all sorts of stuff. You're going to need a tent at the very least. You're going to need a bat wrapped with barbed wire,
sure.
A sawn-off shotgun. You got to have one of those. Where are you going to keep your weird leather vest things? You got to have a couple of those for the week. So there's nowhere to keep that in a Maverick R. Now you can run away from the hordes really quickly.
Yeah.
But you're also going to go through a lot of gasoline doing it. And it's a pretty small tank. You're limiting your range. So as tempting as that is, you listed at number 2 the Can-Am Defender 6x6 Limited. That is my girl.
I'm just saying Lord Humongous would be in a Can-Am 6x6, without a doubt.
Exactly. Well, and it's the long bed, right? So my brain goes to, you can solid mount a 55-gallon drum and just plumb that into your fuel system.
I thought you were going to say live in it. I thought you were going to say 55-gallon, just live in the 55-gallon drum.
You could. I mean, I would love to see some Mad Maxian camper shells built onto this thing. But, again, my concern is going to be fuel range. Also, you've got HVAC. You've got a flip-out windshield if it's a nice day in the apocalypse.
Yep.
You got solid doors, solid windows, so you can keep the creeps out and whatever you want in.
Well, see, that's part of the conversation. What kind of apocalypse are we talking about, right? Because if it's a zombie apocalypse, you're going to need that closed cab. The Mavar shouldn't have that for you. So you're going to want, I had the XD 1500 on there for that exact reason. Plenty of horsepower, sealed cab, a little bit of cargo area. I'm just saying there are options. It's not just the sport machine. Personally, I'm here for a good time, not a long time. I want that Mavar. You got room for your Aussie Shepherd. You got a shot-off shotgun. You're good to go. What more do you need? The wasteland will provide, is what I'm saying.
In a wasteland situation, the Mav R is much more compelling. I will say this. The problem with having a Maverick R for the speed in a zombie apocalypse is if you're running away from zombies, it's one thing, but they're everywhere. So you turn around a corner, suddenly you're going 85 miles an hour at the zombies.
I see the problem. I see the problem.
You kind of want, I think you want to be able to kind of hang back and observe.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, but Mav R is a close second for me, with the 6x6 Defender being first. Just traction, man. Traction for days.
And it looks right,
It looks, yes.
It's like a little mini war rig,
You've got one in red here on the website for the picture with the article. I'd be crylining mine flat black pretty much immediately. But yeah, that's really my only note.
Okay.
So,
all right. Well, there you go.
All right.
Well, speaking of apocalypse rigs, how about our next story here? Can-Am announced that the company has built 500,000 Defenders.
So what you're saying is everyone agrees with me.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Literally everyone has been like, you know what I need around my apocalypse farm? A Defender.
Yeah, it's a testament, one, to how long they've been building the Defender, and two, how successful it is.
We both have a lot of time in a Defender. One of our first projects here at UTV Driver, we bought a Defender with 16,000 miles on it. Insane. We bought that thing thinking, this thing's going to be run into the earth and absolutely beaten to death, and it's not going to last, right? And the story was going to be how it all just sort of unraveled around us. It didn't. So we had to figure out other things to do with it. So we put a lift on it. We put 33-inch tires on it. I rolled it down mountain backwards 3 times.
I was going to say we had to try to kill it.
Yeah, and didn't. And we wound up
shrugged it off.
We wound up donating that machine to a volunteer fire department in Virginia, and they love it. Like,
yeah, they're still using it.
They absolutely love it. Can't be killed. Yeah. Cannot be killed. And
that's
they build one basically for whatever you need, all the way from low power rigs all the way up to the HD10 and the 6x6. I mean, there's literally a Defender for whatever your use case is, and it shows. They've sold a pile of them.
Yeah, and again, I think it speaks to the Defender's one of those rigs, sort of like the Polaris, well, a lot like the Polaris Ranger, where it hasn't changed basically since they introduced it. I think it came out in its current form in 2016 roundabout.
Yeah,
that's coming up 9 years ago,
which is insane to think about. But also,
they're just pumping them out, and people are still buying them. And that's not for any other reason than it's just a really solid machine. So good on them. It's not a surprise, honestly. I wouldn't have guessed they'd built more than that, but when I saw 500,000 Defenders, I was like, yeah, I mean,
500,000. That is a lot.
You see them everywhere.
Yeah, you do. I mean, you do.
And it goes back to what you were saying. I think I would be really interested in seeing like what proportion were just like basic HD7s with nothing on them.
It's got to be just it's got to be the majority of them, right? Because like as cool as the gussied up sealed cab, the $35,000 rigs are, as cool as those are, and as much fun as those are. Clearly we've demonstrated that a base rig is really all you need to have a lot of fun, whether it's, you're bouncing around on a trail or whether you have actual work to do. They're kind of perfect for that. Anytime we're up at Windrock, we see guys bouncing around in a Defender, and like, well, it's not how I would choose to spend my Saturday afternoon. If that's all you've got, it's a pretty good time.
Well, hold on. You say that, but you have chosen to spend a lot of Saturday afternoons that I've spent with you doing just that. So, like,
well, yeah, I'm broken though.
I feel like it's easier to see than. But yeah, I guess the other reason my brain goes to HD7s and HD9s is that I feel like you don't get that kind of volume without selling a ton to businesses and fleets and that kind of thing. And as like real honest to goodness work rigs that never see a trail. They just haul stuff around job sites or whatever.
Yeah.
Which again, to me is even more testament to how durable and kind of cool these things are. So anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. And you can put tracks on it really easily.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Oh, I forgot we put tracks on one. Yeah,
we put tracks on 2 of them.
Yeah, we went up to Montana. The first time we were up there, it was in June, and there was still snow up there. And we first we just had the Defenders out running around and got them very stuck and had to unstick them, and then we put tracks on it and tried to make it to Idaho. But yeah, like bolting up tracks to that, I think that took us like an hour maybe.
Yeah. And like we got 2 rigs done in an hour.
Yeah, which is
if we had been doing one.
Yeah. Even better. All right, that is a wrap for this week. As always, ride safe, have fun. If you enjoyed the podcast, be sure to like and subscribe. You can also check us out over on utvdriver.com, where we have news, reviews, buyer's guides, and galleries 5 days a week. Finally, hit us up on social media. We're on all the usual channels. Shout at us. We want to see what you're riding, where you're going, what you think. UTV Driver is proudly owned by Octane Lending. When it comes time for you to buy your next side-by-side ATV or motorcycle, finance your purchase with Octane Lending. We'll see you next time.